went through like 10 different ideas before I fell on this one. And at the end of the day, I realized I'm gonna have to be ridiculously passionate about what I do.
As a for-profit business, what's the next product in an iteration, the next sort of opportunity you guys want to pursue, and how are you going to sort of look at that?
So that's a very challenging, multi-pronged question. I would say just start from the basics. One of the most important aspects of my entrepreneurial experience with Lucky Iron Fish is it's really important to learn from your failures. And Lucky Iron Fish failed a lot. And I have no problem admitting that I really was awful at the beginning. And when the first idea was we were going to sell the fish door to door in Cambodia because pills cost $30 a year, we're $5 over 5 years. Who wouldn't buy us? And no one did because the government was giving out free pills, and why would you put this weird piece of metal into your cooking pot? And there were all these different challenges. To be sustainable, we had to sell 100 fish a month. In 6 months, we sold 8 fish. Like, we really failed. And so we then pivoted to sell to aid agencies because then we could be with a trusted partner who has relationships in the community. They would be able to buy in bulk, and then we'd be able to sell. But the most lucrative and growth potential aspect of our business is the Western sales. And so we currently, on our website at luckyironfish.com, sell the fish for $25. And if you buy one for yourself, we give one away for free in our fish tank program to an NGO or community in need around the world. And that's in Cambodia, that's in refugee camps, that's in First Nations communities in Canada. And that has been able to propel the impact of the company like tenfold. So in 2015, we had the ability to give away almost 50,000 free units because we sold 50,000 free units. And so I'm struggling, but I'm now leaning towards the fact that there is such potential in Western sales of people who want to buy one for themselves that we will be able to then maximize our impact. And 78% of people who purchase a fish from our website use it on a regular basis because they have iron deficiency. So we're now selling it to Western consumers who want to use it daily, who are then giving one to someone else. And I think that's where the best part of our business is. We're expanding into retail. We're in negotiations with major retailers and groups around the world. And I think that's where we'll be next year.
ZooShare is a cooperative, so we chose it. But so, I mean, to your question, within the co-op model, you have not-for-profits and for-profits. So in our case, we chose not-for-profit. Again, it had to do with the structure of the program here that we were kind of looking for the path of least resistance. I mean, I think the co-op model is good. I mean, you have basically democratic ownership, but there are pitfalls in it. And one of those that we experienced in selling bonds and just talking to people one-on-one is that there are a great many investors that don't want to put their money into something where they don't have an equal say to the dollars they put in. And so, you know, it'll just change the investors that you speak to, and you'll probably have to get a greater total number of investors. But you know, you can definitely make the impact that you want to make with the co-op model, and it's good too because, like especially if you're trying to sell a message of inclusiveness and community, it's built right into your business, your governance structure. So it's a good choice depending on what you're trying to do. Kind of alluded to this before, that when I went to that job interview and I kind of learned about what biogas was, it clicked for me. But what was funny, kind of looking backwards once I'd already started the journey and just looking at myself as a kid and whatnot, it became very clear that I've always been a little bit obsessed with waste. And so once I kind of found this business opportunity that allowed me to think about waste all the time, it was definitely the trigger that got me going.
So when I was volunteering in Dadaab and then working as an intern with the World Food Program, hunger and malnutrition is this massive and incredibly daunting global problem. And there isn't one stream that you can take to solve it. But when learning that iron deficiency is actually the largest micronutrient issue that the world faces, it costs the world $70 billion a year in lost revenue and lost work. When you look at all the groups focusing on hunger, there's a lot not focusing on hidden hunger. And iron deficiency is the main factor of hidden hunger and hidden potential. And so when I discovered with the co-worker at Guelph this simple, affordable, and accessible solution to combat that global challenge, I just knew I was always looking for a way to contribute, but I didn't know how that was going to be. But then when I found this, it just seemed like this is how I can make a difference in solving that. That maybe sounds a bit narcissistic, but what I meant more was around this simple technology can demonstrate that simple technologies can solve some of the world's most complex challenges. And that's what we're trying to do with Lucky Ironfish.
Awesome. In my case, I spent 10 years working at venture capital firms, and so through it spoke to hundreds, probably thousands, of people that were telling me about their dreams, about the companies they wanted to build, and there's something that's infectious about it. And I don't act fast, clearly, it took me 10 years, but at some point I needed to see if I could do it myself. And I think that was kind of like the germ, that's what really spawned it, was just that, hey, okay, I've heard all these stories and I've been doing a lot of the reading and whatnot. I'd love to see if I could be that entrepreneur. So that's what started it. And then I'd overlay on top of it was that a lot of it was timing, particular for the business that we ended up building, which was Pure Energies in the residential solar sector. It was with what was happening in Ontario with the Green Energy Act and the fascination of what was kind of like what I saw as a transformation of the energy sector. And we have like this older energy generation kind of infrastructure that's in place. A lot of it was moving from coal, which clearly is pollutive, to other forms. And so I just thought that was a very interesting time to be living in, and wanted to be part of it. And that's kind of what ended up evolving our kind of like business thinking to what became Pure Energies, our company.
I actually, at a high school level, was really involved in the social sector, and I actually started my own student organization, and I did a lot of advocacy work around violence against women. And I was also on this nonprofit board at 18 or 17, and I remember just being so frustrated with the inefficiencies of how this nonprofit was run. And part of it was just the leader there just didn't have a lot of resources or training, and some of it was just she's like, can you do the finances? And I was like, I'm 18, why am I doing your finances? I can't do your finances. And it really inspired me to want to go into business, because I'm like, if you can have the efficiency of the business kind of sector in that ability to scale impact, I think that's really powerful. So I ended up going to business school. I got jobs in Procter & Gamble. I was managing a $20 million business. And I learned a lot. And then eventually I was working on hair color products, and I thought, man, I don't even care about hair color. I don't even dye my own hair. Why am I doing this? So I literally quit my job, took off to Vietnam. I had no plan. And I got to Vietnam and it was magical. I literally within the first week got a job teaching in classrooms. I got to meet with social entrepreneurs. I exchanged, I consulted with them to learn about that whole experience. And it was amazing. I had this inspiring 6 months, and then I ended up going, on this path of how do I start my own business? And I think I went through 10 different ideas before I fell on this one. And at the end of the day, I realized I'm gonna have to be ridiculously passionate about what I do. And just knowing myself, knowing that it's gonna be really, really tough. I had no clue how tough it was. It's ridiculously tough. But I just knew that enough. My parents are entrepreneurs, and so when I fell on this, and I was I couldn't stop thinking about it. And it just made me feel just so excited and so passionate that I was okay, this is the one. I'm going to take the leap.
The next question is really around the social impact side of your business, and how has it sort of steered your decisions? How does that actually impact you getting investments? If you sit in front of some investors, and do you say, I'm an impact business, this is my impact, or do you sort of focus on the financials? How has that sort of steered those conversations? And we'll start with Amy.
Sure. So for us, we want investors who actually care about our business. We think it's more strategic to have investors who care about education, who will guide us in terms of that industry. And so we've seeked out, most of our investors either have, expertise in that space or, a passion for helping us build our business. So I think if anything, we are self-selecting those investors, and we'd rather partner with those investors. We think in the long run, they're going to help us make us more successful. So I actually, if anyone's not interested or passionate about it, I actually don't care to meet with them.
Right. Perfect.
Wow. So I'm actually going to draw it a little bit to something that we learned from our customers. So again, selling homeowners solar systems on the rooftop. What we discovered in our case is that the conversation, first and foremost, was a financial one, which was, how does this save me money? Or how does this help me financially? And then secondly was an issue about, okay, so now we can actually do something that's great for the environment. And very infrequently would you find, there was this very small percentage of people that were just saying, okay, I'm in, just because it does something that's great. I don't really care about the finances. It really was a financial discussion first. And I think that's something that we discovered with our investor set at the same time. So we were backed ourselves after a point in time by institutional financiers from Silicon Valley and whatnot. And really the basis of their discussions and in conversations with us and their thesis for us was, first and foremost, are you going to be a profitable business? Are you something that's actually kind of venture financeable? And then secondly, on top of that, hey, all the stuff that you guys are doing in terms of your product and your solution and what it does for the world, that's wonderful. But it really was a financial conversation first.
Okay.
So at ZooShare, we were having these conversations all the time because we were and are selling bonds to individuals. And we would go to trade shows, farmers markets, stand up at the zoo outside the entrance. And I mean, for us, we were selling an impact. But what was really interesting about those conversations was ultimately how it came back to finances and really seeing the investor or potential investors' understanding of our risk-reward profile and what they could tolerate when it came to risk and reward. And I mean, we found that a lot of the retail investors we spoke to didn't have a clear grasp on where they sat in that spectrum. And while we knew we were making an impact, that we were causing emission reductions, we were generating renewable energy, diverting waste, there was good stuff, supporting the zoo, we could run on wins for a while. Mm-hmm. It did come back to, okay, you guys were paying a 7% return. That's what our first bond issuance was paying. How are you going to pay that? And what are the risks involved? When am I going to get my money back? What is this secured by? People still ask questions because it's their hard-earned money. And so it was never, and I shouldn't say never, because I think, like you, Bernie, we had a few people that were just like, yeah, here's my check, I'm definitely in. But most people, they needed to understand, they needed to be comfortable, and it kind of got me understanding that at least when it came to impact investment opportunities, people were definitely interested by the impact, but they wouldn't invest unless it had a certain return. In other words, they weren't willing to earn nothing to make an impact, and they weren't willing to earn below market returns to make an impact. But as long as you were there or more or less there, they were definitely very happy to write you a check.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to add, when I say that we work with impact or investors who are passionate about what we're doing, at the end of the day, they wanted a financial return. They wanted a business, and I think we're in this right now to build a business. So I think the combination of the two has been great, and the fact that you can find people that have that kind of combined passion makes sense for us.
Yeah, and I'll add one more thing to that, which I think that we should also lose fact that when you have a company that has social impact and whatnot, it helps a lot with your company DNA, and it helps with attracting talent. Because at our peak, we had about 200 employees across 2 offices, and the amount of people I would characterize actually mostly in their kind of 20s really gravitated towards, hey, I got an opportunity to work for a business that actually is a for-profit business, but it has something that I believe in. And I think because of that, we were just that much more attractive when they were kind of comparing working for us versus going to work for a bank or a consulting firm or whatnot.
Gavin, has that ever factored in that there's the fact that you're a social business? Do investors feel like you're more committed, more passionate about the business because you have not only the financial side, but the fact that you're so passionate in that side?
So I think that one of the interesting tensions I've had as an impact entrepreneur or a social entrepreneur is when you start the company, you can be really ambitious with what your social impact's going to be. And so I said, we're going to have a mandate that every single thing we do will be social. It'll be produced socially and locally in our packaging and this, that. And then as you start to scale, as the company becomes successful, there's a lot of tensions between what is realistic and what is idealistic. And so I have had to come to terms with balancing what is the ultimate goal of the company and what is the social goal, which is obviously improving health, and having to balance how can you do that in a social way versus how can you do that in a sustainable way. And that's conversations I've had with investors. I've got we have a great pool of investors, and they come from very different sides of the spectrum. And so some are very capitalistic and say, you will maximize your margins and then you can take your profits and do whatever you want with them, do good with them. And then we have people who say, well, no, let's just minimize the profit but spend money along the way. And so I have, with my team, created I think a great process that we try and balance both. And so we do things in a way that is socially beneficial, but at the end of the day, realize our ultimate goal. So we have a culture within the company of how can we always do things better, better for the customer, better for the planet, and better for ourselves. And whether it's from distribution, paper in the printer, or the end of the product at the end of the day, we're always trying to maximize our benefit to those three areas.